Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan, along with Nassau Community College student Gina Halstead.
Today you are going to learn about an organization that I have never heard of before. So let's learn together about the National Association of Social Workers, Bill.
Gina, I understand it's the largest membership organization of professional social workers in the world, and it works to enhance the professional growth and development of its members to create and maintain professional standards to advance sound social policies.
Our guest today is Dr. Carrie Tabag, the Nassau County Division Director of the organization, who is also a private psychotherapist, adjunct professor, and school social worker.
Dr. Tabag, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we're going to start off with the most basic question because we all hear on TV, social worker. But can you tell us what is a social worker and what do you do in that position?
It's a great question. Thank you. Well, let me start off by, talking about how my background led me to social work. And maybe there's some people out there who have that as well. I have been a resident of Long Island all my life, with the exception of when I left for college a few years. My father came here, at age 9 from the Philippines in order to make a life for us. We did grow up in poverty, so people look at me and automatically have the stereotype of, oh, you're a psychologist, or, oh, because, I'm Asian. But actually, we grew up in poverty. I was a victim of bullying in high school, so I bring all that with me. But, for example, there are school social workers. I didn't even know who they were until I got the high school yearbook. I'm like, who is that? Okay. So some of the things that I would love for our, my fellow Long Islanders to know about social work is that we are here and there are plenty of us, whether we work in schools, we work in hospitals, we work in many different settings, in mental health agencies where people bring themselves or their children or their family members for therapy, which is, what we do primarily, but we do it in many different ways. So a lot of social workers enter into the profession saying, I want to be a therapist. But we really are a grassroots organization. We started in working with the nursing industry many years ago. And what we do is we connect people with resources within the community. So that's where we start from in promoting social welfare. And there are people who need housing. There are people who need help with finances. There are people who are dealing with mental health discrepancies in their life. And I like to call it that way to kind of kill the stigma. But so we really are a profession that is something completely outside of the other mental health organizations. I chose social work for a reason. And what I really like is that it promotes coordination of services throughout the entire system. We don't just look at the individual. We look at how the system affects the individual. And we bring all of those pieces together to get that person help.
I've already learned a lot from the first question, so thank you. Because I really didn't think of it that way. I thought you worked specifically like going into a family who might have a drug addiction and some of the other things you mentioned. I didn't even think of those. So again, now you're opening it up to us and we're learning a lot.
We
Gina?
do that too.
Dr. Tabak, you just stated just so many different things that social workers do as far as helping the community. I want to know more about you and what made you kind of, have a passion for social work and made you want to explore that as a career field.
That's a great question, Gina. Thank you. Because I'm hoping that there are students who are listening, particularly at Nassau, because then they might go on to one of our neighboring schools. And we have a lot of social work colleges, not only on Long Island, but also in New York State. And one of the things that I always wanted to do was to be that a social worker in the schools. I knew I wanted to work with children and adolescents and also families, right? But there are so many others out there who want to help, but they don't know about social work. And the first thing that I'd like to say is that they think about money. Of course, the reality is everybody has to think about money, and that's one of the things that the NASW, for example, is fighting for. We are fighting for higher wages for social workers. It's got its psychic rewards. That's great. We want to help people. But at the same time, we don't get the notoriety that we deserve and that we work hard for. And I'll eventually talk to you about that with the credentials. For me, when I went into social work, I knew I wanted to do that. This was back in the 90s, so I'm going to be humoring myself here a little bit. This is some part of humility for me. we didn't have the internet. I went to school where we still had the card catalog. I had to go to the library to look in a book about professions. And I was an intern. I was a graduate assistant, or not a graduate assistant, but I was a teacher's assistant for a professor down in Florida. And they said, well, what do you want to do? And first I wanted to be a teacher. Then I wanted to be a guidance counselor. And I said, you know what, I want to do this. It was like a family counseling program. And they said, you should really be a social worker. You'll work in many different settings with many different populations. And I said, well, I want to be a school social worker because I know that because of there was a person in my high school. What is that? I researched it. I had to research it in the books within the library. And then I looked into the schools that had that. Funny story, I wouldn't go to University of Florida's School of Social Work because we didn't have one. And our conflicting school was FSU, which is one of the top social work schools. Had I known then what I know now. So always be open, right? So that's what really brought me into social work. And I'm so lucky. I'm very lucky to be doing what I wanted to do. I'm one of the few.
Dr. Carey, when we think, for instance, of law, we say, oh, that person's a good talker. They should be a lawyer or a comedian. And maybe that's a little shot at lawyers. But in your field, what specific social skills do you and other social workers possess? There's
a long list. I'm just going to rattle it off in my head. Empathy, need to have that. Active listening. So it's not just listening without any response, right? Communication, organization, you got to be able to collaborate with others, get funding for people, connect them. Don't just give numbers out, but physically help them to connect with them. We need to have critical thinking because we do a lot of crisis management. You need to be able to think on your feet, work well with others because we do a lot of collaboration. Self-care, that's a big one. Cultural humility. No one knows everything about every race, every background. Those who do say it's competence. It's not. It's cultural humility. Patience. Got to be really patient. One of our within our code of ethics, it's called, starting with where the client's at. So you got to stay with where that person's at and really just let them be in the driver's seat and you're navigating, right? Professional commitment, it takes time. You want to be a private therapist, you got to put in the time, you got to pay your dues. Advocacy, you got to use that voice. Social work has gotten me a voice, has given me a voice. I was the quietest thing. I was shy. I know people are like, you were shy? Yes, I was. And, working with the system, you got to know how to navigate that. It's okay to say you don't know, but find out about it. So I was doing research even before I got my PhD.
That's an excellent description. And the funny thing is, when I was thinking how I would describe it, what little I know, empathy was the first thing that I thought of. And I said, oh, no, that's one of those words that won't come up. And you said that first. So,
oh, yeah.
See, I'm doing pretty good, Gina.
You are. You could be a social worker,
there
too.
I have a new career starting.
I couldn't have think of a better just skill to describe a social worker, because if you work in a field where you see a lot of different situations, like you stated, crisis management is one of them, dealing with families, dealing with people who have these real world problems. So you have to have some level of empathy and just understanding, putting putting yourself in other people's shoes and things like that.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to ask you, aside from the wage, like you mentioned earlier, how do social workers differ from other types of mental health workers?
I think that that's a really great question. We are a profession that's trained, devoted to helping vulnerable people and communities through the challenges they face in everyday life. So we work with local government as well. Okay, so we have something called a systems theory, right? And in the systems theory, and any social workers listening are probably rolling their eyes because everything's systems theory with social work. And I even try to have my students look at other theories. But one at the helm of social work is called systems theory. And there's three parts. There's micro, which are individuals. Meso, which are basically the agencies that are in between the individuals, and what we have as macro, which is the community, right? So Nassau, in itself, is macro. And all the individuals that reside on Long Island are micro, and then we have schools, and we have all the settings where the social workers work, and that's meso, right? And so that I don't see in any other mental health profession, not psychology. And that's what's great about social work. We take from other professions. We take from any ology, right? I have a bachelor's, for example, in sociology. There are people who come into social work with a bachelor's in psychology. Even anthropology is applicable here. And I really learned more about this when I was going for my PhD. In the master's program, they go into it as well. We promote social welfare. I don't see other mental health professions doing that. And now I'm here to say that a lot of my friends are psychologists and licensed mental health counselors. They were also in my cohort, right? So I have major respect, but I'm also really proud to be a social worker because there's things that I can do that they can't. It's not that they can't or don't want to, it's that they don't have the knowledge. But I will say that I see social work as leading that because I am starting to see the other professions starting to say, yeah, we're about cultural humility too, and advocating for other, for those who are like immigrant populations, as well as those who are refugees. So they're all starting to see that that's needed as well. So, and I also don't see them having a code of ethics like social work does. We have specific credentials as well. We actually have to work on our master's degree and work on our internships all at the same time. And any of my students that I meet who are working or their parents, some of them are parents, I'm like, how the heck do they do that? I'm in admiration for all my fellow social workers out there. This is what we do. And a lot of social workers have multiple jobs because we financially need the money.
You are listening to My Hometown on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Gina Halstead along with Mr. Bill Horan, and today we're learning about the National Association of Social Workers, which works to enhance the professional growth and development of its members to create and maintain professional standards and to advance sound social policies. Our guest today is Dr. Carrie Tabag, the Nassau County Division Director of the organization, who is also a private psychotherapist, adjunct professor, and social worker.
Dr. Carey, as you were answering the question, so many more questions come up to me. And why is it important for our listeners to know about the profession of social worker?
I was hoping you'd get to this. Did you know that there are 2.8 million people that reside on Long Island, and that number is growing? I mean, anybody who resides on Long Island is like, that's got to be, yeah, it's actually growing. Did you also know that Long Island is one of the most racially segregated regions in the country?
Yes.
Good. I'm glad you know that. But there are people out there who don't. But they'll feel it, and then they'll go, but yeah, it's supported by data. And did you know that half of Long Island's black population lives in just 11 of the island's 291 communities, and 90% live in just 62 of them? And this is from a 2017 census, right? So that's 2017. So the next census, it'll be interesting to see what they provide as well. So Long Island has particularly serious issues with segregation and inequality in housing and educational opportunities, because educational opportunities are based on where one lives. This all started in the post-World War II era. And many local governments took measures to decrease existing black population. And, it's something where a lot of people don't know. So we still have red lines to this day. If you look at Garden City and Hempstead, for example, there's red lines there. Out in Suffolk, there's red lines as well. So we have a lot of inequities, and we need to continue working with local government officials. We also have an opioid epidemic on Long Island. And so social workers are at the helm of providing Narcan training, right? So this is an increase in health cost and loss in productivity that a lot of people need to know.
It sounds like 24 hours a day isn't enough for your profession.
No, we do. And for example, we even worked through Hurricane Sandy despite our own struggles. We gathered up our own crisis. We were in crisis too. But we're survivors like everybody else, and we had to put our own needs aside to help others.
And I'm so thrilled that you mentioned the census and just redlining, because I'm originally from Virginia myself. And when I moved up here, I did some research on Long Island because I wasn't familiar with where I was moving to. And I learned why, Levittown being just a prime example of the history of Levittown, and how there's certain bridges around Long Island that are like lower in height to kind of keep the African American population down back. I believe it was around like the 60s. Not entirely sure how far it goes back, but redlining is crucial. I remember they also did a news story on it about 2 years ago when I was in high school. So I appreciate that you mentioned that. So with that being said, why and how is social work particularly vital to the Long Island community? That's
a great question. I'm so glad that you provided that. One thing I will just mention to you, I'm sorry, because this is just how I think. Look up Robert Moses, the history of Robert Moses. That's all I'm going to say. And there's people out there who are probably rolling their eyes, but there's a reason why, if you go on the southern state, why the bridges are so low. Mm-hmm. Okay? And why the southern state, they call it red line. I think they call it red because a lot of people die, but the reason why it actually snakes around. So that's all I'm going to say. So like I was saying, we have an opioid epidemic particularly high on Long Island. So we also, like I said, with Hurricane Sandy, but a lot of people also don't know that social workers are in libraries as well. And that's a really great place. So anybody who needs social work services, go to your local library. And there should be a social worker there. Social workers are starting to do internships in libraries because those people who were the library staff members, they're very aware of the community's needs. And they know what gaps in social services exist. So the social worker will work with the librarian staff. Sorry if that's not the right title, but they'll work with the library staff. And then that includes like finding a job, maybe mental health, housing assistance. And we also have everywhere, right? But here we have an immigrant population. And we have people who come in from, the New York City metropolitan area thinking that it's going to be better. But, we're all in financial crisis. The Long Island is very difficult. We have major taxes, right? And maybe that's why they have the taxes, because they're trying to keep certain people out.
Dr. Carey, I'm going to suggest as you're answering a question, I'm just thinking, I think social workers need a good PR department and maybe T-shirts that say, "Hi, I'm a social worker. I do the following," and just keep listing it on the back like they show all the people in a concert or on a baseball team or a little league, etc. Because so many of the things you're telling me, to me, this is I'm getting an education in 30 minutes about the field of social work that I never knew about. And, of course, you hear the term almost daily or you read about it in the papers, etc. What are some examples of the social work that could help the Long Island community that you're doing, either you or coworkers are doing literally every day?
We're everywhere, right? We're in many different settings. People think of, unfortunately, people have and just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying about wearing T-shirts and advertising, I find that even if they have those, we need to wear them proudly because there's a negative stigma for social workers that, you come into the home and you take children out. Or, like any stigma with mental health treatment. However, with social work particularly, historically, there's a generalization that social workers take people out of the home and that they work with people who who have mental health diagnoses that are maybe psychotic or who need treatment, or they basically are there to help with food stamps, quote unquote, right? So social work does so much more than that. And even if we did have T-shirts and we did have all of the advertisement, would people really notice? Would people know what we do? And they would automatically say, why social work? Why not psychologists? Why not licensed mental health counselors and all the other mental health professions out there? We do have Social Work Month in March, and it's not publicly known.
Right. No, I never heard of that. So that's another thing.
I just thought it was Women's Month. That was it.
It is Women's History,
yes.
but it's great because social workers predominantly women started it. Mm-hmm. They founded that, right? And so, and there's a large percentage of women in the profession of social work. And a lot of even social workers have shared with me, why don't we have ads? Why don't we have that? Because of funding. We need sponsors. We need funding. The National Association of Social Workers is volunteer. And I love the New York State division. This is something that really I gravitated towards because, and then one of my things was, the membership can be seen as a little bit high, but you get so much from it. And we need malpractice insurance. We help with that. We provide we need continuing education credits. We provide free continuing education credits to low cost to members, even to non-members. And that's one of the things that I love about being a division director for Nassau. We just had 2 events where one we sponsored and another one I attended, where we're there to support social workers. So being a social worker, you need to network. We're all out there, but we need to speak with each other. And I feel we don't need a T-shirt. We don't need, billboards, but social media is a really, really big tool that we need to use.
Doctor, you stated earlier that you're a big advocate for increasing the wages for social workers because of just how much you guys do in the community. But not only that, you just stated some of the stigmas that you face as well. I'm interested in knowing what are some of the other biggest challenges that you face as a social worker and that social workers in general face.
Yeah, that's a great question, Gina. Thank you. We have the pandemic. We're still crawling out of that pandemic, but there's a major shortage. As with all the other helping professions, there is a shortage. But particularly in the schools, we have a mental health crisis amongst our youth. and amongst our children. And there's been regression, particularly those who have IEPs, right, like individualized education plans, who are there receiving services. And so there's a shortage of us. There's not enough of us to go around. And a lot of people left the agencies to do private practice, to do their own, because that's where they're getting more money and they're not burnt out. Social work is a 24/7 job. I had to make sure I turn my phone off. It goes off all the time. I get emails, tons of emails, and so we're always working. Other professions have that as well, where in some places where you work, you don't get a lot of funding. But for social workers, there's a shortage. We don't get the appreciation and the acknowledgement. And the pandemic did lift us up a little bit, but now I feel that's fading. We are burnt out. We have compassion fatigue. We have vicarious trauma, and we don't do enough self-care.
You are listening to My Hometown on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Gina Halstead, along with Bill Horan, and today we're learning about the National Association of Social Workers, which works to enhance the professional growth and development of its members, to create and maintain professional standards, and to advance sound social policies. Our guest today is Dr. Carrie Tabag, the Nassau County Division Director of the organization, who is also a private psychotherapist, adjunct professor, and school social worker. Doctor, I wanted to ask you more about the National Association of Social Workers and how it was founded, if you have any background history on that and what it's all about.
Yeah, it's really, I can talk about the New York State division. And so I came into it, I would say, not that long ago, because I was a student and I joined, and I would like to say that a lot of students should really join. Historically, it is national. And then there are the state divisions that basically came off of that. And so I can really talk to my heart about the Nassau. I'm the director of the Nassau division. Like I said, I've been a resident. I'm not going to mention my age, but let's just say many years. And so what we meet on the third Wednesday of each month remotely from 7 to 8 p.m. And that's great because you don't have to leave your home or drive anywhere. But for our college students, we do want to start rotating and meeting in person. A lot of people are asking for that. Maybe we could do hybrid, right? So people can attend remotely and we can be in person. We locally sponsor events. We do collaborations with local colleges and universities. For schools of social work, we're going to be doing an event for mentoring, meet and greets, and we're also going to be having informational panel presentations for those graduating so that the students feel that they have connection before they graduate. We offer scholarships and awards. So we actually, if any social workers want to attend any of our events, they get continuing education credits for low cost. Any monies that we get from that, we put towards a pool that's going to go towards scholarships for those who are graduating or in school for bachelor's in social work, master's in social work, and we also have Social Worker of the Year award as well as others.
Dr. Carey, can you tell us something about any upcoming initiatives or new programs? And if students are hearing this today, and whether we're talking about high school or college, and saying, you know what, it might be interesting, they just want to know more. Is there a way a student could find out more and, test the waters, maybe in the summer, maybe by doing some volunteer work to see if this is for them? It might be something they love or something that's just not for them and they go on to something else.
Absolutely. We actually have in each college, there are, student organizations for social work in particular. I would first tell them to seek that out. And they can also go to the NASW website if they're interested in membership. But first start to feel out social work. Go to the student organizations that head up social work in your school. And also speak with other social workers in the industry. That's something that I didn't get a chance to do. And we're more than happy to speak about our profession with you. I think if I was a student right now and I wasn't too sure, that's exactly what I would do. And I also tell other students to do that. Start with there. And one of the colleges has shared with me that the requirement they have for any students graduating, they have to be a member of a professional organization before they leave. I love that. Students get discounted membership rates and take advantage of any student discount memberships in general, but take advantage of that and start to do that. I love what we're going to be doing with another college. We're going to be providing a meet and greet, like I said, a panel presentation, and also where people can serve as mentors for those students.
That's a great suggestion, because you don't realize at the time after college, one, you're getting such exposure to people with knowledge and experience, and you just never know. That person that you stood next to or had coffee with at a meeting may someday be the person interviewing you or saying to you, giving you either good advice as a mentor or just giving you a suggestion in life. So there's so many opportunities, and I think that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
Now, Doctor, you just stated that, how students can get involved within a professional organization before they leave school and things like that. I want to know, how can the average citizen like myself or Mr. Bill can get involved and support the National Association of Social Workers?
Thank you. I love that question. I can go on and on about it, but what I can say is that we do need that support and appreciation and advocacy, right? And so one of the things that may be considered doing is, community service, volunteering, attending our events, and those social workers who are already in the industry, perhaps looking into being on a steering committee. Shout out to my steering committee. It's very strong, very representative. We even have we have like a handful of PhDs, DSWs on there, and they know their stuff, and we are here for you. So we provide, and we're open to what people need. So we always have that monthly meeting. So when we have events, and we're going to do more and more of them, we want everybody to attend. Social workers maybe to even bring their families so they can learn about what they do. But we would also love it if we have a lot of communities that need donations, right? So donating is also very helpful, as well as just doing volunteer work within the community, helping.
Dr. Carey, before the show we talked about giving out some information, so this is the time. Do you have a website or some information you want to tell people? You're very easy to talk to, and obviously a very nice person and dedicated to the profession. Any information you can give us where someone could look into, an email address or a website?
Thank you so much. Yeah, so we have the website for the New York State Division is naswnys.org. So that's the website for our division. And through that website, you can find the Nassau Suffolk Division as well. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'll do the best I can in answering your email. Just put something in the heading so I know it's not spam or anything. It's ktabag@gmail.com. ktabag@gmail.com.
See, you read my mind. I was just going to say, just give it a second time, and you did. Any final tip to someone out there who wants to be in your field?
If anybody's looking to be a social worker, please, try not to listen to all the negative stigma and go with what your heart says and what's going to make you most happy. Shop around, make sure it's the right fit for you, but know that the industry is changing and that we're using our voice and we're advocating and we're out there. We haven't been on the radio, for example, right? Look on social media, join those pages and start shouting it out. And that's one of the things that I did, and it was the best thing, is I didn't pay attention to the negative stigma and ask.
Dr. Carey Tabag, the Nassau County Division Director of the National Association of Social Workers. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Bill Horan. I'm here with Nassau Community College student Gina Holstead, and we thank you for listening to this week's edition of My Hometown.
We'd like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.